Lucy, tell me when we're ready. Oh, we are ready. We are recording. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Executive Committee of Manhattan Community Board 1. I'm Tammy Meltzer, the chair. We're joined for Executive Committee meeting. We're going to start with understanding the City Administrative Procedures Act, CAPA, as it affects each committee. Betty Kay, if you're on, I believe, has a couple slides for us. There's a couple reasons why this is important for all the chairs to know, is because we often talk on this board about engagement. We are advisory role to city agencies, and notifications are super important for how we are notified and how we have the opportunity to opine and get feedback from the community to give to city agencies. So, chapter. Okay, Betty, take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to give you a little bit of a talk about kind of how I came across this, excuse me, in my role with the Transportation Committee, because it is Chapter 45 of the New York City Charter. And in fact, this was the longtime members, which I'm not. It was passed in 2018, so you may not be familiar simply because it's newer than I thought it would be. Next slide. Thanks. And just so you can see how I came across it, this is sort of the back door in. I came across the fiscal year 21 agenda of rule changes for the Department of Transportation. And this is an example. If you look at A through G, this is actually what's specified in CAPA as the information that must be posted with each announcement of a rule change. This particular rule caught my eye. If you look at B, with it being highway rules do not currently require signage for a single excavation, and signage is important to let the public know what's happening at a work site and who to contact in case of emergency. I'm sure this resonates with Pat. In fact, the highway rules had no specifications. Every contractor can do what they want, but in fact, there had to be multiple holes in the road before they had to do any signage at all. And that's why people came across a digging site and said, why don't they say what it is? The rules didn't say they had to. Next one. So another example, this one that interested me also, because this was number 18. DOT alone was going to change 23 rules, but this was about pedestrian accessibility at work sites. Another issue that always comes up. When people say they're not protected, they don't know where to go. And here the reason was the highway rules do not specify clear standards for pedestrian safety and accessibility that should be used on street construction sites. They had no rules. So what they want to do actually is to create some rules consistent with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. They're a little bit behind. The Americans with Disability Act, again, we're talking over 30 years, and a US Department of Justice. They're already 11 years late in responding to that as well. So this was kind of a mystery. Go to the next one. I thought I better learn a little bit more about what CAPA even was. And so Lucian, who's going to speak later, told me where to look in the city charter. And there is a regulatory agenda. As I said, this specifies the information, as you've already seen in the examples that I showed you, the types of information. Next. Next slide. The act also, because you can find it online under rulemaking, and it specifies how it's done. And when you read the rules, it very specifically says there's a 30-day window. You're supposed to announce this in the city. Lucian, what's the word? The city record. They're also
the city record. Yeah.
City record. They're also supposed to let every legislator know, city council person, but also every community board, so they are aware in advance. Which is why I contacted again with Lucian to say, is anybody telling you? Because I'm not hearing it. Also, I'm concerned because I asked if DOT would come in and discuss their rule changes proposals, and they didn't. Well, Lucian will address that because he spoke with them. Next slide. almost done. For those who want to go look online to see what's out there, this is the website where it's posted, so any chair can go look for what's being done with the agencies that they work with. If you look at this little red box, there's the agency rules. When you press that, because this is, as you can see, the last line here, it's official rules proposed and adopted by city agencies, because they don't always tell us when they change the rules either. So here's where it is online. Go to the next one. If you press that little red box there, this is what you see. There's only a portion of it because it's just one screenshot. But even in this shot, Board of Corrections, Housing Preservation and Development, Commission of Human Rights, Consumer Affairs, Human Resources Administration, the Taxi and Limousine Commission. It is every agency and department that goes through this process. So it does really affect us all. And this is just this week's postings. So I'm going to hand it over to Lucian because he's the one who really was digging deeper on this.
And before you go to Lucian, this is really important for every chair of a committee to understand, because the biggest problem that we have with the city is a lack of engagement, a lack of transparency. This all goes into that. Lucian, take it away.
Yeah, no, it's nice to change the rule before it becomes finalized.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Tammy and Betty. So in terms of the way that agencies reach out to us for rule changes is extremely varied. There's no standard at all. Sometimes we'll get an email from kind of some faceless email address, and sometimes we'll have intergov people reach out and say, there's a couple of rule changes that we think you should see, and we'd love to have your input on. So CAPA really seems to be a great find in terms of having the menu of rule changes that are set to be considered for the next fiscal year. And this is starting in May, so it's right around the corner for us. We'll have the list of all the rules that the agency is looking to touch on. And so this is an easy agenda item, I think, for many chairs. Now, because this is a new law, it's passed in 2018, so I expect that some agencies are doing better than others at getting this kind of set up. This year, we'll, if whichever chairs are interested, our office will reach out and ask them for a CAPA overview of the rulemaking that they're looking to do. Now, I will say, give me 1 second. Sorry, my son is talking a lot right next to me. So it is not exhaustive. An agency can still propose a rule and go through the process of rulemaking, even if it's not on the CAPA list, if they show why it wasn't considered at this point. So if there's some sort of time-sensitive reason, then that they could give that. Now the legislation also says that even if they don't provide that reason, it wouldn't preclude them from being able to do that. And I assume that that's the product of during the legislative course of action, the agency said, oh, you can't bind us too hard on this. Sometimes things come up. So there's lots of escape holes for the agency on this, but for the most part, we should see a good idea of what the intent is of the agency. And when the next administration comes into power, this will be especially important because the tone will be sure to change. We've become quite used to the deputy mayors and commissioners that are running our agencies for city government, but that's all going to change very soon because of term limits. And so CAPA, I think, will provide us a very good window of how aggressive or not aggressive different agencies will be in changing the rules that bind us.
And Lucian, can I add one more thing? I didn't realize that with these rules, but in fact, the rules say that individuals can propose a request in the change of the rules. So if there's something that you don't like, a committee can ask that rule be revisited and be put on the agenda to be changed. So in fact, the resolution that the board passed about parking in front of curb cuts actually asked for 3 different rule changes. And so interesting, it actually was feeding into this CAPA process of a community board trying to initiate a rule change. So thank you.
Okay, anybody have any questions thus far?
Hand is raised, I think. It's Justine.
It is Justine. Sorry, I wasn't looking in the right place. You
No,
would
no,
think.
no, that's okay.
We'll go
May I?
Justine, then Paul. Yeah, you're on.
So, okay, so this act was, this information was enacted in 2018. And the stuff you showed us, Betty, are proposed rules that are there for transportation. So I'm not clear on what we're supposed to do with this. Is this something that now each committee is supposed to be checking every day? Because it's, from what Betty said, is they change it every week. I
No,
mean,
so
which is-
Justine, there's a distinction here. The city agencies go through a rule changing, rule making process, and that happens all year round. What
Right.
CAPA does is it organizes and says, well, the agencies, for all the rule changes that they know that they are going to make over the course of the next fiscal year, they have to list them for you in one place at one point in time. There will still be a rolling rule changing process for each agency as they kind of go through their own timelines within that fiscal year. But we will get a snapshot of what we should expect over the course of the next year for each agency that has rules. So an agency doesn't necessarily even have to pursue the rule change, but they're essentially giving us notice at before the beginning of the next fiscal year that they do intend to change rules. So if there's a rule change that you want that isn't on the list, or there is something that you do want on the list, or there's something you don't want on the list, at that point in time that there's action that you should take as a committee and a board to rectify that moving forward over the course of the next fiscal year.
I mean, that is a really cool thing. And it seems like it's a great way of aggregation of information. It also seems like it's a little bit overwhelming. Will there be staff support to help us figure out or to check and see, or is that something that boards should be doing? I mean, I guess boards, the committee chairs should be doing, which I guess the answer is the latter. But I think it's going to be a lot.
Well, we certainly a lot of what we do is demand based, and so if a chair wants to, by May 1st, if a chair says, I want to know what is on the CAPA list for X committee, we'll certainly take a look. Over time, once the staff is really good at this, because this is a fairly new idea for us as well, we're going to look to train chairs to do this as well, to empower the chairs to look.
That's cool.
The city record's a very important publication, and it's not just rule changing and CAPA, but there's also all sorts of things like contracts, concessions, RFPs. They're all in there. And the new online format, it used to be so daunting. You would get this paper publication, and then you just had to leaf through it. But now you can actually search through it. And so there's a lot more power that individuals have to kind of cut right to the chase of what they're looking for. And I'm sure that there's also ability to set up notifications if certain things pop up in the city record. And there's a lot of kind of power level moves that we'll certainly like to explore here as staff.
That's cool, right? To give it where what you're saying, set up notifications. So if this agency posts a change or a proposed rule, you'll get an alert. That would be really cool if that's possible.
That would be the best, and we want everyone to set their own alerts as well. We want to have multiple layers of notification so that nothing falls through the cracks.
That's great. This is fascinating. I don't have the access right now to keep track, but either Betty or you, Lucian, can you send or share with everybody the links that you talked about?
We can definitely send a link out for the city record and specifically the CAPA section. Yeah.
Yeah. Do it by email though, not in the chat. I mean, do it in the chat too for people.
Right. No, we'll do it in email. Right. Make sure everyone has it in their inbox.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and keep in mind, one thing that I learned was this process has to occur in response to all legislation at the federal, state, or city level that affects that department or agency. So if you want to look at how they interpret and how they're going to enact that, they're going to make rule changes as how they do it. So it's kind of interesting.
And one thing I'll add, and this is important, the federal government and the state government for that matter, the laws that they pass do affect our rule changing process. And with the infrastructure bill that's being discussed now in Congress, highway funding, which is a broader term for kind of lots of different sorts of surface transportation funding. So, roads, surface level rail, everything you can imagine that the federal government chips in for, which is a huge portion of our city budget. When you kind of look at, entitlements and transportation monies, there will be strings attached to accessing those pots of money. And so if Congress decides that, its priorities are changing, and then certain safety measures or different manners of constructing roadways are their priority, those requirements will force the city to go through a rule change process in order to be eligible for those monies. And so that may not be on the capital list, for example, but it would be a really big deal, potentially rule change. So this, for whatever sorts of agencies rely on block grants or target grants from the federal government, this is really on the docket. So Youth and Education Committee, if there's infrastructure bill funding for that, waterfront certainly. Well,
There's a lot now with housing.
Land use, zoning, economic development. There may be zoning implications to some of this funding. So
Paul has
it's
his hand
gonna
up,
be
Lucian,
interesting.
so
Oh,
your
go
comment
ahead.
about waterfront reminds me that Paul has his hand up.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I just had one question that came to mind when I heard of this. Certainly one entity that a number of committees have extensive dealings with is the EDC. And they're not a regular traditional agency. They sort of go by perhaps a different set of rules. So that's my question. Are they required to be part of this chapter 45 of the New York City Charter, or is that something we'd have to look into? Just wondering,
Yeah, that's a good question.
They don't have to tell everyone all the issues they're involved with in our board.
I think it's an important distinction to make. EDC feels in a lot of ways like a city agency, but you're right, they're not actually a city agency. I think technically they're a public benefit corporation that's just been essentially empowered by the city to act on behalf of the city, and its governance is completely dominated by the city. And their counterpart for the state is Empire State Development. And these public benefit corporations act as a way to move around certain regulations and procurement procedures to be more nimble and transfer money better to non-state partners and such. So at being public benefit corporations, they don't go through rulemaking. So I don't think that CAPA will have a direct, we won't see anything from EDC on a CAPA list. However, what I said about the infrastructure funding, EDC will change its own internal guidelines and rules and how they work with stuff based on how the federal grants are passed through the state to the localities. So I think that there will be changes for them based on the infrastructure stuff, but their projects will have to react to the rules. So if they're funding, example, a street reconstruction, these rules on how they provide accessibility when there's roadway work, they will be subjected to that, but they don't actually create any rules that would be affected by CAPA.
I would just add that I guess this is another indication that EDC is able to be even less transparent than other agencies, and maybe that's a good reason why they should have perhaps less control over important issues and items, and because they are just unaccountable or less accountable than other entities. Thank you.
Lucian, can I just add though, a point that might be of interest to Paul is that I found going through the budgeting process that EDC goes through, like all the other departments, that gave a lot of information about what they were doing and their funds and where things came from, where they were going. So you may find that interesting.
Okay.
Without a doubt, let's go to Francis next. Francis,
I
thank you.
just want to share I was zeroing in on the health issues, the Department of Health, and now with the vaccines and services, health services, hospital services, I'm sure that's going to be a very interesting area, especially now with the pandemic and all these things going on. So I'm going to jump right into that.
Yeah, and for instance, I would say even in addition to health, I mean, health is going to be huge all on its own. You'll
Yeah.
also have health in hospitals.
Right.
We'll have
Yeah.
rules, and then also the Department for the Aging, which has an enormous regulatory complex over all the tons of facilities that we may
Right.
also want to look over.
Okay. I know Pat doesn't even want to begin to look at this. Everything is probably
Yeah, Pat's got her fair share of
quality.
agencies as well. Oh yeah.
Exactly.
All righty. Betty, I really thank you for the research. I thank you for
Thank you.
sharing the information when you get it. It's, you know, that's why there's 50 of us on the board. So if you see something, say something. It applies with everything happening on the streets and everything that you think would be good to share. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. We are moving on to the next thing, which is we're going to have Lucian take away the district budget consultations. We are back. I know it feels like we just did this, but Lucian, take it away.
It never ends. It never ends. Everyone, warm up your engines. We're entering budget season soon. I am once again your humble Manhattan borough coordinator for borough budget consultations. But the benefit of that is that I get to work really closely with OMB on a lot of these things, and I can kind of try to shape things that, give a report a leg up. But I don't want to say that, but kind of. OMB has, like us, budget cuts, and they are running with fewer staff in their community board unit than they have in previous years. And so their ability to do full-blown borough budget consultations in the same way that we did in previous years is similarly impacted. Now, this presents, I think, an opportunity for us to revisit how we get our information. So I was working really closely with a dear colleague of mine, Angel Mescane, who's a district manager of Community Board 11. He's going to be my co-coordinator this year, I believe. And he had a really great idea, which I think is just fantastic, is that we're going to streamline the borough budget consultations to be much more boilerplate for each agency, and instead really focus each board, or direct each board to focus their energies on bringing the agencies in for district budget consultations. So it requires a little bit more energy on the front end to identify and schedule the agencies to come in. But in my experience, having a borough commissioner come in and walk through every single project or program that has money spent in the district is very illuminating and far more in depth than what we get from the borough budget consultations, which have kind of warped in years to include more and more kind of district level stuff. But when you're in CB1, what CB12 is interested in can be far different. And so the district budget consultations that I've had have been excellent, and I want to expand those. So every single agency that we could possibly want to hear from, including EDC, DOT, Parks, SCA, DOE, NYPL. We are going to ask them. We're going to make a list, and I'm going to schedule them to sit down in a closed meeting with the chair leadership and CB leadership that's relevant and interested in what they have to say, because that's what we do with budget consultations. And that will guide us on what sorts of things that we will have future public meetings about. The reason why it has to be a closed meeting is that we have to create a safe space for them to really be specific about the budget. And that's how it is for the borough budget consultations and what we've done with district budget consultations. So with that, there doesn't need to be a lot of discussion unless you have questions. Of course, I'm here for any questions or comments or ideas, concerns. But I really want people to give me a list of agencies that they want to talk to, and I will throw myself into getting times together, because this is really the best way to set our budget discussion and really get the most out of it this year. Because last year, I think given everything that was going on, it was a little bit harder for us to really get down into the nitty gritty of things. But I think this is a great way to kind of build in a lot more ownership throughout the board. So with that, I'll leave it back to Tammy.
I see hands up. We'll go Susan Cole first and then Bruce.
So do you think we could meet with the SLA? I say.
Yeah, they're not as bound. They're not as bound to.
No, because they're the state. I know.
Right, but we can certainly ask. We can certainly ask for the night mayor to give us a budget consultation. If they're even doing anything. I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about? The office of the advocate for nightlife, the office of nightlife.
Yeah. I think that's,
so we could.
Is that defunct by now?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they got defunded. They certainly felt like they were defunded every time I asked, and we tried to schedule them to come in. I'll talk to Susan Stetzer at CB3. She's on the board, the advisory board for them.
Great.
But I would love to bring them in as essentially an analog to SLA for you.
That would be fabulous.
And in spirit of this process, Susan, we could also ask for the SLA to meet with you to talk about their budget priorities. It's been some time since we've heard about their, the system that they wanted to put in that allowed everyone to search for stipulations that were on the licenses and all of that. We could certainly use an update.
That would be great.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Great idea. Thank you, Lucian. Put it on the list. Bruce, you're next.
Hi. I just want to say that I'm driving near Albany, but I'm on. I can't raise my hand again. I just want to ask, in the matters that we've been discussing, I pulled over to talk. There seems to be relatively little bearing on the LPC, correct? I can't see.
Not sure. That has to do with funding, so that would be a question that we can ask them.
Yeah, I think the LPC is certainly a wonderful candidate for a district budget consultation.
Okay. And the first discussion that we were having, and I couldn't. It was hard for me to drive. And there again, that CAPA, that's a different matter, and that doesn't really bear on LPC, correct?
They're all over.
It does bear on them. It does bear on them. They can make rule changes as well.
They are making changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you need, yeah.
I want to follow up on that. I'll do it, offline with Betty or with
Betty is our current expert on that. So I do suggest that you follow up with Betty.
Betty, I'm going to follow up with you.
Bruce, to illustrate one of the rules that I think that we in the past have been really really big discussion. Remember the rule where LPC was going to drive more significant changes to staff level as opposed to
That's
CV.
right.
Yeah, that's an example of something that would be on the capital list, I would assume.
And they were also going to exclude rear yards. That was another rule change that was controversial.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
I
Yep.
see what you mean now. Okay.
Yep. In that vein.
I'm here, and but I just can't raise my hand again. Thank you.
Thank you for pulling over, Bruce.
Thank you. Okay.
Drive safe. Okay. If we have, again, if you would like to have consultations, please email Lucian so he can start a list. I would appreciate if every chair thinks thoroughly through this and emails so we can get this done. That would be outstanding. Any other questions? I see no other hands raised. Lucian, let's talk about going back to the office.
Back to the office, parentheses, kinda. So as part of the mayor's order for all agencies to return to the office on May 3rd, CB1 is going to participate. We're not a mayoral agency, so I'd like to stress that the mayor does not have direct authority over the community board. The community board has direct authority over itself, with some borough president mixed in there for good measure. But we are going to participate in the return to office like mayoral agencies, and to achieve that, we will have staffing in person for 4 days a week, and sometimes there will be 5 days, but we'll guarantee 4 days a week of staff being present in the office for two big reasons. One, we want to make sure that the phones are covered, and two, while rare in the past, there are some people who do approach the office for service, and we have put together policies that we've gone over with the union to deal with the matter of people who come to the office. Largely, the office will only have one person at a time. We can manage that, and so that there won't be any danger of having two people too close together, and allow a person a lot more freedom to move around the office at will. We'll have all sorts of hand sanitizing accoutrement and pumps, wipes, especially near high touch areas. Certain areas are going to be barred from any non-staff entry. So the principal office itself no one other than staff will be allowed to go in. The records room will certainly not allow more than one person, and certainly no one other than staff. The conference room, we will rearrange the chairs to adhere to 6-foot distancing guidelines. However, we do not suspect over the next month that there will be any in-person meetings. I'm happy to check in with you again next month should anything change. So don't fear. We're not going to call you in for any in-person meetings. All CB meetings will continue to be remote until we get further guidance from the VP's office, but the office will be occupied. Our priority is service and at the same time safety. So we're going to do our best to maximize both to the extent that we can given the circumstances.
So based on that, does anybody have any questions? And I will say off the top, we have not heard anything about remote meetings yet. As far as we know, we stay status quo. Oh, love this.
Tammy, I have one question.
Sure.
I think that when we finally do go back to in-person meetings, would it be possible to have them in person and remote at the same time? Go ahead.
We've actually made that request to the legislature and to the city already. We passed a resolution supporting that concept. to give us greater accessibility. The questions will become, and this is something that we have no answers to, is what will constitute quorum in a hybrid environment for the community board members? Because the way that the laws are written, you must be in the room to vote, and there are no proxies. So those are going to be things that we are carefully looking and watching for to see how they revise the rules, and that comes out of the state level.
That makes sense, but if it does turn out that the community board members have to be present, I still would like them to be Zoom, because I think it gives more access to the public that way.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of, ways that we could provide access, whether it's, depending on the location that we host the meeting, whether we could live stream it. I mean, there's lots of things that you have to consider that go with that. This is different because we're all on a platform, but you're sitting in front of your laptop. How it will work if we're sitting, for example, in the auditorium at Pace or in one of the large meeting rooms. What kind of equipment do we need to get all of that done? It's not impossible by any stroke of the imagination. I would prefer if the borough president's office would absorb any and all additional costs associated with that. But yeah, we've made the request. It's just how it gets through will be another thing to be seen.
Thank you.
I'm happy you asked that question. Before the pandemic, the office had already purchased items to make blended meetings possible. When we were in the process of procuring the Google licenses,
Oh, wow.
the office already purchased a special webcam that allowed for 360-degree meeting to take place, meaning video and audio in the conference room.
That's
that
really
will-
cool.
Yeah, and we haven't plugged it in, since
Yeah,
we
right,
all,
well,
quickly
Wait.
vacated the office.
We had to give
you know,
back the speaker timer, just
I
saying.
just want, actually, before I go any further, I just want to say really quick while everyone's here from the executive committee, we do have an employee who has been consistently going to the office on almost a weekly basis since, I don't know, late April or May, and that's Lucy Acevedo. And Lucy has been, she volunteered to go. She has been, using her own transportation at times, was probably one of the first people back on the subway, and has been making sure that critical office things were taken care of. And so I just want to take a second just to, thank Lucy for being
Lucy.
super courageous and support of the office and the mission of the CB.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Yep.
Hooray, Lucy, thank you.
Yeah, really, just
As I started
really.
this meeting, I needed to
Thank
get my steps
you.
in. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you,
You're
Lucy.
welcome. Thank you, everyone.
But yeah, so just getting back to the blended meetings. So we have 95% of the hardware. Maybe we'd have to make sure we just get a different computer to power over the long term the 360-degree microphone camera. But if we had to go into blended meetings tomorrow, we could get something going and it would be pretty good. The problem is that the space that we have certain access to, our conference room, is very space constrained at best, and we've all seen licensing committee meetings where there's standing room only and really not much. We have people kind of spilling into the main office and peeking through doors and looking through the window. We can't do that, and we couldn't hold full board in that meeting, or so if we did have to have a space constrained or blended full board meeting, we really are at a huge disadvantage because I don't believe there's any spaces that would look to accommodate 50 people, much less any other additional members of the public, and then even at like the spacing guidelines that we would need. So if the governor rescinds the executive order, we're going to be in really tough times trying to figure that out, and likely unless we found a place to meet outside, we wouldn't be able to hold full board according to the current letter of the open meetings law. So, Tammy, since the beginning of, we identified open meetings law as being a real issue, and the governor finally, coming in with the executive order, she's been working really closely with Eulene's office, who, is really taking a lot of leadership on this to try to craft a bill to modernize open meetings law, given what we know now about how people can successfully meet remotely. And we look to, some pathway to have blended meetings, but technology right now won't be the limiting factor.
Does anybody have questions on that?
Can you hear me, or am I muted?
Oh, no, Bruce,
Hear you.
I can hear you.
I'm so sorry. Again, my hand isn't up.
That's okay.
Lucian raises a very good point. Unlike some committees, every landmark committee involves a series of easels, giant fiber boards with renderings, many large handouts, and lots of people. And the conference room was crowded in the best of circumstances. So
Yes.
that's a conundrum in terms of our committee, how we would hold physical meetings now.
Bruce, it's not we've actually been planning and looking at that. If you remember the last meeting that we had in the office in terms of a committee meeting was landmarks. I don't know if you
Right,
remember.
I do remember.
And
That last
exactly. And the key will end up being wherever we are, when we are in person, it will only be one applicant in the room at a time. You know, you can't, nobody's touching anybody else's presentation. If they, they can send us stuff digitally that we can show. If they have, posters and poster board and plans, that's fine. If they're handing out paper, that's fine. But it's going to be very limited as to, it's going to be very limited. Not limited in terms of engagement, not limited in terms of access for the public, but we don't need to have all the applicants in the room. You need to have the applicant in the room at each time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Human management is going to be a huge factor. We have huge box of PPE. We have signs that we can put in the hallway now. We just have to pray that we don't get to that point before everyone is comfortable. And we're all relying on the governor right now to not pull the rug out from under our feet and rescind the executive order, or put a timeline of the executive order that's doesn't behoove our office's ability to get everything in line fast enough. And we will rightfully have members of the public and the board who will not feel comfortable meeting. It's really just going to be a really murky thing until the law is reformed and we can create our own transitional strategy, if we're given the latitude to do so. But right now we have no latitude, and we're just kind of hoping it lasts until we can get that latitude.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions on this? Okay. Here's the way we're going to do committee reports from now on, because I know that everybody has had a lot of work in their committees. It's been really intense. And I think that's actually a really good function of how we work, is to have all the discussions robust in committee. So the only thing that a committee report is needed here is if you think it's going to be so controversial that we need to either move you earlier in the schedule for full board, if you feel that you need additional materials that we don't know about, or anything like that. It really doesn't have to be a review of what happened in committee. It really just needs to be, this is going to be a hot button, because not everybody goes to every meeting. I don't go to every meeting. I tune in here or there when I can. I just need to know if it's going to be hot and where we're going to be. And I think I should update Susan. I think you're last, Lucy told me, you're going to close the night for resolutions. And that is something that I will tell you when we're here is if the executive meeting is right before full board, I'll let you know if you're going to be the last one based on the way the month goes. So for this month, Susan, you're last. And then I think that's it for right now. I had something else and I lost it in my head. So let's rock and roll. We'll start with the committees. And I'm pulling them up. Just give me 1 sec. I apologize.
I have a question, and
Sure.
I have a controversial issue. And
Okay, you
so-
go first.
All right. It's 24 John Street. It's a hotel. And we got a lot of complaints and we voted not to approve it.
Okay.
And so, and with it, we will have stipulations that will go to the SLA or whatever. It is a bad neighbor. There've been drugs. There's been traffic. I just realized we have to talk about more traffic in that resolution. And it's the community is really came out and they're very upset. They have neighbors and whatever. So I just thought everybody, if you hear of anything, it is 24 John and it is a problem.
Oh, good. And you're closing the night. That'll be a fun one. Thank you, Susan.
Anytime.
All right. Let's see. Large venue, Mariama.
Sorry. Okay, we had nothing controversial. We had a very quick, but good meeting, about 15, 20 minutes long. We decided that we'd have another one next month, but what we accomplished at this one was a discussion about just how many large venues we already have existing, how many are in the city, and the different types of streets and neighborhoods where they tend to be, and came to like a consensus that what we were looking at probably doesn't fit any district. So we're going to have to work to figure out what does.
Perfect. Thanks, Mariana.
Mm-hmm.
Alice, environmental.
Hi there. Wagner Park is 95% complete. It'll, so to say it's controversial, I guess you could say so. But anyway, that, we'll see their final plans. I'll present those. People should know, you all should know that there's very little that we could do at this point. Letters to the Public Design Commission, if you want individually about any of your reservations about these plans, would probably be the only thing you could do at this point, which could be helpful if you don't see this as a great solution. That's about it. Thanks, Tammy.
You should also probably note that construction is due for Q1, demolition of the park is due for Q1 2022.
Yeah, and a 2 to 3 year time frame for construction when the park will be
Exactly.
done.
All righty. Battery Park City, Justine?
All right, okay, so with the Battery Park City Committee, we had two, I thought, interesting major things to discuss. I don't think it's controversial particularly. First, which I think will be kind of interesting to everybody, is the Tribeca Film Festival is coming back, and they will be spending and installed 11 days in Battery Park City, over by Brookfield and the marina. They promised to be socially distanced and to do all the right things, but I think it's kind of cool that they're back, and that's a great thing. I think it's June. Betty, do you remember the exact dates? I don't have that in my head, but they'll be there. Then the other thing, the bulk of the meeting. Oh, do you remember the dates, Betty? Go ahead, tell me, or Tammy, if you know. It's June.
You'll
later than
report
it
on
was
it.
before.
You get to report on it tomorrow. Make sure you have your dates. It's all easy.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And then the Battery Park City Authority presented their 2020 budget and their financials, which was an interesting, lovely thing. The highlights are that they collected from Battery Park City in ground rent, pilot, and civic fees $338 million, of which they kept for themselves, operating costs for themselves, $103 million. And they selected in ground rent $47.5 million. And, you know, that's it. It's too much money. That's kind of the about that. That last part was my comment. Thank you.
You're welcome. All righty, moving along, Patrick.
Nada. We're taking a break from controversies.
Woo! Don't worry, it'll be back. All
Yeah,
right, Betty Kay.
Yeah, there will be nothing to act on for the Transportation Committee. So in that sense, there's nothing controversial. But I will just be doing an update on where the committee stands on the congestion pricing resolution, which will be coming next month, to warn people if they want to get engaged. Now's the time. That's all.
So, thank you, Betty. And I am going to give a heads up that Betty is going to share the bullet points and everything at the full board meeting. If you have a comment and you would like to discuss congestion pricing, please show up at transportation. I know not everybody can be at every meeting, but we're going to have to get through resolutions and the work will be done in committee. And that one has had a heck of a lot of work in the last couple months on that. So thank you. All right.
Amy, can I just say two things? One, it's June 9th. Tribeca, thanks to Cora, who texted me that it starts June 9th and it goes for 11 days for the Tribeca Film Festival. But
Okay.
more importantly, the website says the full board meeting is the 27th, not tomorrow. So let me know.
It's not tomorrow. It's the
Okay.
20th. Yeah.
It is. Okay, good. Thank
Sorry.
you. You gave me a heart attack.
No. I
It's
have
okay.
something.
Thanks, Justine. I had a moment of panic.
Yes, I was like, what? So
No.
I had
Sorry
a
about that.
No,
Sorry about
thank you.
that.
It's all right.
All righty. Pat Moore.
I'm doing quality of life too. Let me quiet my kids. I'm sorry. You want to go to the next person?
As you
Oh,
wish.
okay. Never mind. I got my door. I got my door closed. I did it. Okay, so
We all live
talked
it. Don't worry.
Yeah, right. We talked about the Congressman Nadler and Congresswoman Maloney joined with Borough President Brewer. We talked about their reintroduction of the Helicopter Safety Act. We talked about, we had the first precinct, the community liaison officer, Brian Nelson. So we talked about community issues with him. We discussed briefly, I made some announcements about some deadlines that are coming up with regard to 9/11, not healthcare, but the Victims' Compensation Fund. So I'll go over them again tomorrow. And we also shared documents to, in that regard in several languages, so you can print them out and share them to your friends or email them around. And I believe that's it. Justine, am I forgetting anything from Quality of Life?
Demolition
Pass it works, since you just asked me to do it.
the Fulton Fish Market, DC.
Yes, oh my goodness, how could I forget that one? EDC came to talk about finally knocking down the 10 building. So after Sandy, that was supposed to come down, and then nothing happened until 2019. They started again. They said officially we're going to start the work, and then still never did. And since, unfortunately, was it Rosalie? I don't remember the last name. I forget, but I wanted to actually name Sanchez. Yes, thank you, Justine. Since her passing, her murder, actually, of course, that drew attention to the issue again, and they've, speeding up the process of clearing out the building. They've said that it's safe now, it's protected, the security there, nobody else is going to get in. They reassured us, and it should be coming down soon.
Perfect. Okay. You're good?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Francis, you're here, Health and Human Services Subcommittee.
Basically, it was a wonderful presentation, the best presentation I've seen on the viruses, the vaccines. They were truly superstars. I appreciate all those people that had the time to see it, and it's online now, so you can see the entire presentation. I have to say, it's the best I've seen. They really go into depth. and talk about the variants and everything that's going on right now. So I would recommend that you check it out. That's it.
We're going to actually, Francis, we talked about this earlier. We're going Lucia and I, we're going to share that with in the newsletter and with the full board. So, because we think it was a really great presentation, and there's far more digital attention than it got.
Yeah, it was very well. They were really superstars. They were really good, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Francis.
Yes, I agree.
All right. Moving on, Trisha.
Hello.
Yay.
My agenda just completely went off my screen. I think I remember everything. Kamau from the hold on one second. Sorry, guys. Technology.
Getting to know BMX, science labs for the classroom, and DOE for the summer. How's that?
Thank you. So Kamau could not make it, so we had to postpone that first item. Jen tried to get Stephanie to this meeting. She was supposed to come from the DOE, from the Department of Community Affairs. She did not come. We are very curious, and we will be putting it on to next month's agenda as to A, how they're going to pay for it, and B, who the providers are going to be, if they're offering academic support for 6 weeks over the summer. In the press release, it had no information about either of those things. So for those that are interested, it will be on May in our committee, and hopefully Stephanie will be joining us. We also, what else? Oh, we had a guest from the DNA CL lab in Cold Spring. It's a fascinating program, and we're going to be circulating it to all of our schools, looking for partners to have their programs at their schools, to liaise with people, and also to get, they have like a summer camp that goes on out there. And it's an absolutely fascinating program for kids on DNA. It was actually in Forbes, the person who started it. It's a really interesting organization, and we're going to be staying in very close touch with them. So you'll be hearing about it probably from your parent coordinators if you're a parent. So that was cool. And then I had the absolute pleasure of announcing that we were successful in getting the Harbor School its pool. And that was a major win. Not only did we get the pool, we got
Congratulations.
400 bathroom seats and a gym. So
wow.
I'm just thrilled, as are they, and they are so deserving and they're so grateful. I think they've written 100 thank you letters. We really have Margaret Chin too. She really went to bat on this one. Claire at Governor's Island, they just, really got things to go. The SCA, the money wasn't there. They had to get the city, the mayor's office had to kick in some, Gail kicked in some. So it was another village, but we're really thrilled. And now we'll just move into connecting, making sure that the SCA connects with the school as they go to build it out.
And I want to really point out here, this is part of what the community board does. And when you have a success, we should all take a really deep breath and enjoy it, because the work that we all do here is time consuming. We are all volunteers, and the amount of times that the parent community came and that we've talked about the Harbor School and Governor's Island in the last, gosh, know how many years, this is a real joyous win for the community, for education, for everything. So thank you, everybody.
A long time in coming. It's great.
Exactly.
Yes, good work.
Terrific.
Exactly. All right, so let's keep going, Trisha, if you're good.
I'm good.
Paul, and then I have 2 important announcements that everybody will be really happy with before we go. Paul, you're next, and then I come back like a bad Benny.
had a very lengthy meeting, about 4 hours. We covered a lot of ground, but I won't go through everything. We had a good presentation from the president of the Museum of Jewish Heritage. You'll hear more about that. We got some repairs done on Peck Slip. Speaking of accomplishments, they put in those metal skate stops today to hopefully get skateboarding there under control. So we'll see how that works out. We had a good presentation and we passed a resolution about identifying some alternate funding ideas for the Seaport Museum to try to help them out. The two most controversial issues were, one, heritage trail markers. This is a proposal by the Downtown Alliance to basically refurbish the existing markers that you're probably familiar with. They're black and red, and they have identifying signage just saying, go this way for the Seaport Museum, go this way for the Wall Street, go this way. You know, they identify important places that people may want to get to. Anyway, there was a lot of controversy about that item, about how they handled it or didn't handle it properly. We had a number of speakers who indicated that they should have done a better job as far as the history, as far as collaborating, as far as putting up more signage, etc. Bottom line is we did pass a resolution basically disapproving it and laying out the conditions for why we did.
Just froze, right? Or is it me?
Oh, thank God. I thought it was me.
Oh, yeah, I just had a heart attack.
Yeah.
In fact,
Okay.
I think
So, all right. Phew.
I would like to jump in for 1 second just to say that. Oh, I'm sorry.
What was
Paul,
that?
sorry you froze. You're back.
Okay.
And then Bruce, you're gonna have to wait because if I have hands up. Paul, you're back.
Sorry. Let me just move on to the last item, which had to do with a resolution on the African burial ground. Congressman Nadler and other members of Congress are supporting legislation to empower and try to build up that institution. There was a lot of support for that. There was a discussion of trying to link the Seaport Museum to the African burial ground. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few years that the museum should be doing a better job of explaining the history of bringing in slaves into that port and
That's for sure.
that entire story. But members were a little uncomfortable with that. They seemed to want to do more study on it. So we pulled it out of the resolution and we may revisit it in the future. But for now, it's just a straightforward resolution supporting the legislation of Congressman Nadler.
Perfect.
And I guess
Thanks.
that covers it.
There are two things I want to note for Paul. Technically, the applicant for the signs is DOT. So I think that Downtown Alliance, who was the presenter, DOT was on. I think DOT could have done a better job of explaining what the process has been, what the process could have been, and why they went down this road. Because it seemed to me that the Downtown Alliance was the one fulfilling a request. And through it all, the biggest thing that we noted last night was a lack of public engagement. So the Alliance is paying for it because the city doesn't have the money to pay for it. But at the same time, the city could have and should have done a better job of engaging the community to understand, and furthermore, ensuring that the area is who we are. We are not going to be rebranded. This is not the Seaport District. It is historic. You can't just lop the word historic off. You're not changing Lower Manhattan to downtown. Downtown could be 23rd Street. So things like that is where the controversy was. Please know it was discussed in committee. If you have questions about that, you can reach out to Paul directly. All righty. Mariama has her hand up, and I see Bruce had his hand up, and then I have two other things. Mariama, you're first, and then Bruce.
Maybe in the future, the DOT or the Alliance or the community board or whomever would consider a larger task force for something like this. Because it's, when you're talking about some of the signage and some of the sites, these are national. These are not only exclusive to Community Board 1, you know, so you need a larger group. And if you're going to be talking about the African or the indigenous areas and the slave market and all that kind of stuff, you definitely need to have some, you know,
we talked
Black
about that
there.
last night.
Yeah, those were the very
Yeah.
issues that people were
Exactly.
raising.
So maybe they'd
Exactly.
be open to, like, yeah, some sort of task force or something.
Mariama, they could have done a charrette, for gosh sakes.
Yeah,
on
a
Zoom.
charrette, absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many things that could have been
There
easier.
was zero consultation as far as I know.
Zero. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we discussed this in quality of life last year. I think it was our May 2020 meeting. It was after George Floyd's murder, which ironically yesterday was, you know, the outcome of the trial. And we called for signs and we asked for signs and, you know, and wanted to work. And so there's history even within Community Board 1. They could have come to us. They could have gone to your committee earlier and talked to at least us if they're not going to talk to the larger community. So they definitely need to go back and revisit that.
There are so many opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, we are on record saying we don't want to be rebranded.
Right.
When, you know, when it came up with signage that went around in the Seaport District, quote unquote, versus the historic South Street Seaport. I mean, there's just so many things that just didn't kind of gel. I quite frankly felt bad for Taina because none of this, the Downtown Alliance is paying for it. So, you know, thank goodness they were willing to pay for it to do the signs. But on the other hand, they also got the downside of a lack of engagement by the city. So sorry about that. All right, Bruce, you're next.
I just wanted to say, in terms of the first time in, well, memory, including when the rest of the board takes off, that we did not have an application. But I do want to tell the executive committee, and actually Paul and Tammy might be better at this, that we're probably reaching the end of the line on 250 Water Street. There was another community activist meeting on Thursday that I couldn't attend. I think that we've done our very best. We're going to get a smaller tower yet again, but I think we're going to get a tower now, unless there's a lawsuit or something. So that's all I wanted to note. And thank you, Paul, for doing a lot of work. Tammy for doing a lot of work. I know you still are. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, Bruce and everybody has led me back to a perfect segue without even knowing it. There is a lecture series tomorrow put on by the Landmarks Preservation Committee about preserving New York City's significant places of Black history. It is a free seminar that you can get through Eventbrite. I'm going to stick, I'll copy it and send it in the chat. It's a lecture on African-American landmarks and historic districts in New York City. I have absolutely zero idea if they're going to include Community Board 1 in there, but it certainly is an interesting conversation to have. So I will stick that in the chat.
This is the Landmarks Preservation Commission, right?
Correct.
The city agency. Okay.
Well, they should include Community Board 1 in that case. We have underground railroad houses down here. So if it's landmarks, they should include us.
Listen, you know I always think we should be included, but I'm going to have Lucian share the link to everybody. So if somebody wants to sign up, it's tomorrow evening. Feel free to enjoy and do that. And then secondarily, I want to share some really good news. There's been lots of meetings that, you know, I tend to go to as chair, but one of the most significant ones is we finally have a date with BMCC and Community Board 1. Justine, put yourself on mute.
Sorry.
So we have a date to do a forum with BMCC. It's super exciting. It's the untold history of African Americans and Native Americans in Lower Manhattan.
Great.
So this is targeted to CB1. I'm super excited. We have June 17th as our target date. It will be a virtual seminar. We're working to put together a panel. Pat Moore, Alice, Lucian, and I are working with the university, and the university will be, BMCC will be the primary drivers with us, and we just could not be more excited. We'll be, you know, doing some more outreach to have a couple historians, and they're looking for a moderator. It's really exciting for us because I think putting it in the educational forum and having an educational institution in Lower Manhattan that is the most diverse one in terms of as a comparison to CB1 in our demographics is just incredibly exciting. Do I know everything about it yet? No, it's all still in progress. And the ideal goal would be, this would be a continuing series that we work with BMCC over the next year to do something, you know, twice, 3 times a year as bandwidth allows.
And I'll only add, Tammy, is that one of the most exciting parts about it is that we're able to get it scheduled to have the president of BMCC, and the 17th allows us to provide a lead-in event to help to lead in Juneteenth, which is on the 19th. So we really want to make sure that we're, you know, making everyone aware, talking about Juneteenth, learning about Juneteenth, and you know, just 2 days before it's really great. I'm really thrilled that we were able to get that date.
So with that, I'll see if there's any questions.
I just want to ask Tammy that the whatever you put in the chat, Lucian also email that to everybody, the link? Sorry. Just
No
can't
problem.
access
I'll email it to you, Justine and Bruce, since you're both
Sorry.
limited access to the chat. Sure.
Thank you. And I'm going to jump because I'm driving.
Bye, Bruce. Thank you very much. Be safe. Mariama, is your hand still up?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, as one of the few, if not the only Black and Native person here that's a member or on the call, it sounds very appropriate. You know, the dating, like Lucian said, it's 2 days before Juneteenth. You know, it sounds like you guys, you know, put a lot of work into it and are doing a great job.
And Pat Moore is on there with us. So there's only so many roles that everybody can possibly do. And it takes a village, and I'm grateful for all the heavy lifts that everybody does on all their other committees and stuff and various things. Because Mariama, you're treasurer, large venue working group, co-chair, you got a lot too.
Yeah. No, I'm not complaining that I'm not there. I'm saying from somebody, you know, like as a member of the Indigenous community and as a member of the African American community, it sounds like you did a good job.
It is exciting.
Well, you're doing a good job.
It is crazy exciting and just intense. But
a thoughtful job. That's a better word. Yeah. Like.
Listen.
Thanks, Mariama.
Yep.
You're welcome. Thank you.
On that note, I am at post-board meeting last time. We did a pricing out of mom and pop businesses with the other community boards. It went very well. We had great attendance. We are working on another upcoming seminar that links all of the Manhattan CBs, because while gentrification looks like one thing in CB1, we might be the precursor to what CB 11 and 12 will look like. And what can we learn to cross-reference that? And those are always the goals for actionable items. And we will have another session we're working on, but not this month or next, because most of us on all the Manhattan community boards, I know you're going to be surprised when I say this, are overwhelmed with ULURP actions. So we're going to give it a bit of a break and come back later in the spring, summer. All righty. With that, it's 7:26. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Unless anybody has anything else.
Second.
Woo! My goal was 7:30. Have a nice night, everybody. See you
That's
Tuesday.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.